Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of How I Met My Twin. This is Lily of the Valley Coaching with your host Bernadette. Let's get into it, shall we? Now, I should have named the previous part, trust me, you want to meet this man, because that's what my higher self told me as part of the briefing I was getting. But alas, I'm going to leave it the way that I have it. Now, where we had left off, I had returned back home to New York, and I was dealing with the initial separation of me and my twin. Okay? Where we had left off, I had gone into a downward spiral. Now, after seeing who his now ex, but seeing who it was that was trying to replace me. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say there's no competition, even though there really isn't. But I'm not one of these women that kind of gets on here and makes whole posts about that. I mean, I don't really have to toot my own horn, but toot toot. But suffice it to say, I went on a downward spiral. And when you have been very close to death, everything becomes crystal clear. There is no guesswork. A couple of times in my life, have met with Mother Mary, and she's the one that comes through those times when I want to kind of not be here anymore. It's happened a couple of times. And when I'm really considering it, that's when she comes through. She's a mom. I'm so sorry. So I remember not even making my bed. My house is a mess and everything. And, when you're depressed, you don't care about anything. You don't care about taking care of yourself. You just let everything go to shit. So I remember being on the couch, not wanting to go to work the next day, but scraping myself out of bed because I had rent to pay. And I remember thinking, I don't want to be here. And I remember hearing Mother Mary clear as day. She was talking to the other angels up there. And she said, we got to help her. We got to help this girl. This is what she said verbatim. I had really been considering it. So, after about a year of waiting for him to return my calls, for him to come to his senses, I had decided that I had to move on with my life. But I gave him a full year of my life. I gave him a full year to do whatever he had to do, whatever was keeping him from me, so that me keeping my promise of waiting for him, eventually it would get to him handling whatever loose ends he had to tie up so that we can finish as originally planned. It didn't turn out that way. I wound up meeting another gentleman, and we had dated for about a year before we got married. Okay? And I guess you could say in my life I've had two proposals, one marriage. One in the spiritual and one a physical marriage, okay? And it was great for a while. It was great because he was a Libra, I'm a Taurus, both ruled by Venus. So it was very harmonious. And as I said, it was great for a while. 3/4 of the way in to the marriage, we tried for a baby. The first time I was scheduled for foot surgery, so, you know, they saw it was like a phantom pregnancy, right? That my HCG levels were like through the roof, but it was a phantom child. There was no child there. I don't know how that happens. You guys that are into science, you're going to have to help me out with that. So I had canceled the foot surgery thinking that I was pregnant, but I wasn't. Then, we kept trying and everything. And I got pregnant. But I only kept the baby for about 8 weeks before it died. I had a miscarriage and she bled into the toilet. But I remember feeling a sense of grief, yes, but also relief. Because what kind of life was I going to give that baby? It was a very small apartment, and his mom was kind of ruling the roost and everything. I wouldn't have felt like I had authority over my own child. Needless to say, that was the beginning of the end. Because when you hug somebody and something feels different, like his whole attitude changed. And I felt tingles all over my body. He was coming, I'll never forget. This was at World Trade Center. This was post 9/11, obviously. Yeah, my bird's going crazy. Here's the birds outside. Don't worry, baby. We're going out in a little bit, okay? I have to take him out and get a little bit of sun. So I'm not going to make this a long episode, but I remember him coming down the stairs, and just the look on his face it was not the same husband that I had originally married. And even throughout the marriage, I kept on seeing my Tommy's face throughout the entire marriage. And, of course, being a married woman, you feel a little guilty that, this is somebody else coming in, And I would see his face, like gigantic, like his face, but gigantic, like right there in my face, almost like he was projecting himself to me. Or maybe he could feel that I was with somebody else. So after the miscarriage and after the antics, and this happened on October 31st of 2013, it was? Yeah, of 2013. I'll never forget, okay? Because prior to that, we had moved from New York to Texas for about 8 months. He drove, so he could get work anywhere. I didn't drive, and I still don't drive. It's something that I have to change. So he was able to find work better than I was, because anywhere that's not New York or a metropolitan area like Los Angeles, you got to drive. So we come back to New York, and that's kind of where everything kind of like went haywire after that. He was good for being the Band-Aid over my heart and making me feel lovable again. But it wasn't meant to last. He wasn't meant to be the end-all, end-game. So after that miscarriage, as I said before, for a lot of couples, once there's a miscarriage, it kind of changes the dynamic of that marriage, that relationship. Things change after that. He was working as a bus driver for a senior citizen center, okay? And he was making pretty decent money, okay? And he wanted to go out with his coworkers, mostly guys, you know what I mean? hanging out with the guys, which I'm not going to tell you not to hang out with your guys. The only problem that I had is that these guys wanted to go to a strip bar. And I blatantly told him, if you go to this strip bar, you will not have a wife when you come back. He said, okay. And he went anyway. That was the end. That was the end. Because he was out all night. And that's when I decided to file for divorce. He wanted to reconsider, but at that point I had already made plans to hold space for my twin to come back. Now, for those that are listening to this episode that don't get the whole twin flame thing, you're not going to get it unless you're a twin flame yourself. When you're holding space for somebody, it doesn't matter what your current circumstances are, what your current relationship is. Okay? So, because there was no children, no property that needed to be divided between us, it was a pretty simple divorce, okay? And it was granted real quick. So, at this point, I have no place to live. Okay? Because nobody could help me at that point in my life, and nobody was allowed to, because there was a reason why I had to be wrung out like a mop. Okay, this was my Job season. So in my vagabond era, I had done a lot of traveling. And I eventually wound up back in Colorado. I was on the West Coast and I had stayed with a friend and everything, and you know, I had to eventually move on and everything because I couldn't stay there. And I eventually found myself in Colorado, working in a restaurant as a prep cook. And I'm working. And my ears worked a lot better back in the day. And I overhear, oh yeah, Tommy will be here tomorrow. Huh? What's this? All of a sudden, everything that I was briefed on came rushing back. Ooh, what am I going to wear tomorrow? How am I going to do my hair? How am I going to do my makeup? And I finally saw him. And you should know that the timeline of how these things happened was in 7-year swells. I met him in 2007, reconnected with him in 2014. So this vagabond era is in 2014. And we'll move on to the 2021 and what happened in 2021. That one will be for part 3. So I see him, he sees me, and he wasn't expecting me. He didn't know that I worked there. It's like, oh my gosh, hi. I knew you were going to be here. You got to play the game though, right? So I go to hug him, and that hug that I remember, still there, and he leans in for a second hug. Now, mind you, nobody else at the job knows how we know each other. They don't know that we're fiancés, because let me tell you something. You left it as us being fiancés, so I consider us still fiancés until you tell me different. Sorry. You know, that's how you left it. So we're still fiancés. So nobody else at the job knew that we were fiancés and friends. So we hugged as friends. It's not like I'm going to tongue him down right there in the freaking kitchen, okay? So he leans in for a second hug. I was like, and it was nice. What you doing here? Oh, working. Oh, that's good. And, he didn't stay long. And I'm sure when he drove home that day, that he was like, wait a minute. I was not expecting to see her again. And everything changed after that. And I'm going to tell you why. Because for the next 7 years, I will be subject to many attacks. And eventually, I had resounded myself that I probably was never going to see him again. But one day, I'm doing laundry. I'm in the basement. I'm doing the laundry. And something occurred to me to check Google, check his name. And this was in 2021, October of 2021. So this is following a timeline, 7/14/21. I look up his first and last name, and I'm seeing an obituary. No. That can't be. No. Because why? Why? No, that's not how this is supposed to end. No. God, this can't be real. No. And for somebody that has gone through the 5 stages of grief, and I will tell you, I recently lost my mother. You know the difference between real death, because you have witnessed that person dying. You know that person is no longer with us, and something completely different, which I'm going to explain what I have surmised from this situation. I lost my mother July 31st of this year. It's been hard because her presence is everywhere. I know she's fully transitioned and everything, but mommy is still around. And now she's at a vantage point where she is limitless. Now she can help me in a way where she was limited by the body before, she's no longer limited. So I see her hand in a lot of things in my life. Do I miss her? Fuck yeah, that was my girl. That was my girl, man. And she's made her appearance a couple of times on my videos and everything. And, those of you that have been following me since my inception, since 2016, you know Mama. You know Mama Dukes. You all have said hi to her, so. And she loved you guys too. So, this is bittersweet, So the reason I say this is that I know she's gone. And it followed, a very long-standing thing that she was going through. I don't want to get into personal details here because, again, I do have enemies. But suffice it to say, she succumbed to the struggle and everything. But I will say this. When it comes to this type of thing, excuse me, some people are not taken until they completely forget their family and who they are. She still knew who we were. So at least she left with that memory of us knowing who we were. So that's a grace. I just needed to take a few moments, okay? Just give me a minute, guys. I feel her presence with me. Like the picture that we used at her memorial, that's the image that's emblazoned in my mind. Not the sick woman that left us. Because I'm looking at this picture of her here when she was 23. What a baddie. Oh my mother was a baddie. Oh my gosh. No wonder Daddy fell in love with her. She was a baddie. Long hair, and she had the fire in her eyes. She had these beautiful hazel eyes. Just this beautiful Ukrainian woman, okay? Ukrainian ladies are beautiful, okay? A lot of them are models. A lot. A good portion of them, okay? So my mom was a fucking looker, man. She was a fucking baddie. I'm looking at this picture right now as I'm recording this, guys. Dang, man. Shit, she had to beat them off with a fucking stick. That was my mom. That was my mom, honey. And that same blood runs through my veins, baby girl. I love you, mommy. I miss you. I can hear her saying, I'm right here, baby. I'm right here. She's hanging out with us right now with this episode. Oh, I don't want to get into that. Okay. Refocus, recenter. So, the reason I bring that up is because you go through the entire thing of the memorial and, grieving and the eulogies and all of that. But with this death declaration of my twin flame, it's been 4 years and I have not been able to go through the 5 stages of grief. Something in my spirit just does not... No, this it's just a little too convenient. Especially if I show you pictures of him when he was with me or before he decided to pursue me again. Something must have happened. He must have said something. He must have spilled the beans about something or just said, listen, y'all need to leave me the fuck alone. I want to be with her. And I had talked about this on my other social media. And consequently, guys, I can't get back into that account. Not only that, but I had a dream about this woman. I'll get into all of that in a little bit. I had done some research. Of course, I went through this little mini grieving and everything, but it's like I didn't want to be here. I was like, listen, if you're going to be up there, I want to be there with you. There's no way in hell that you are leaving me behind here, And twin flames, we I went through the gamut of emotions, but to this day, it doesn't seem right. And I'll explain why. I'm going to explain this in the next episode because there's a timeline of events and I want to get everything straight when I hit record. So let's just leave it here now with the timeline for this second part, which is 2007, I meet him. 2014, we reconnect. 2021, I get a death declaration about him. No. In part 3, you'll see where my spiritual detective mastery shines. So, stay tuned. I will talk to you guys soon. Please take care of yourselves. All the hugs, all the kisses, and I will talk to you soon.